The Thin Red Line brought Terrence Malick back to cinema after 20 years of silence and became one of the great editing legends in Hollywood history. Did you know its original cut ran 5 hours, and its billed lead actor didn't discover he'd been cut down to 5 minutes until he watched the premiere? 15 facts, starting with the version you never saw. 15, the lost cut, 5 hours, and a vanished lead performance. The Thin Red Line, is barely half the film Malick shot. His first assembly reportedly took 7 months to build and ran roughly 5 hours long, nearly 2 hours more than the theatrical version. That missing footage has never been seen by the public. But the most staggering casualty was the film's own lead. Adrian Brody was cast as Corporal Fife, the central character of James Jones's novel, and shot the role believing he was the star of the movie. In the editing room, Malick reshaped the entire film, gradually shifting the focus to Jim Caviezel's private wit. Brody didn't find out until the premiere. He sat down to watch a film he'd headlined and discovered his performance had been reduced to roughly 5 minutes and a couple of lines. He learned his role had been eviscerated, in his word, in front of an audience. It remains one of the most brutal editing room stories in Hollywood history. 14. An army of A-list actors was cut to nothing. Brody wasn't alone. The Thin Red Line's editing became legendary for how many major stars it erased. Billy Bob Thornton recorded around 3 hours of narration for the film. All of it discarded, the voiceover later split among the soldiers themselves. Bill Pullman, Mickey Rourke, Viggo Mortensen, Lucas Haas, and Gary Oldman all shot scenes and appear nowhere in the finished film. Others survived only as fragments. George Clooney's substantial role shrank to roughly a single minute in the closing scenes, and John Travolta's to little more than a cameo. The reason was Malick's method, which his actors describe with awe and bafflement. As John Cusack put it, Malick wrote a script, was making a film based on the script, but was not shooting the script, chasing its essence instead, capturing hundreds of hours of footage and then finding the movie in the edit. Stars accepted tiny parts just to work with him. Many ended up with no part at all. 13. Malick vanished for 20 years before making it. The Thin Red Line was a genuine cinematic event because its director had effectively disappeared. Terrence Malick made 2 revered films in the 1970s, Badlands and Days of Heaven, and then simply stopped, retreating from Hollywood for 2 decades. He was a near mythical figure, a Harvard graduate, Rhodes Scholar, former MIT philosophy instructor, and translator of the German philosopher Heidegger, who had walked away from filmmaking at the height of his acclaim. Where he went and why remains part of his legend. So when word spread in the mid-1990s that Malick was returning, the reaction was seismic, which is precisely why so many of the finest actors of their generation clamored to appear, accepting minor roles or no guarantee of screen time at all just to be directed by him. The Thin Red Line wasn't just a war film. It was the resurrection of a lost master, and everyone in Hollywood wanted to witness it firsthand. 12. It was released into a war with Saving Private Ryan. The Thin Red Line had the strange fortune of arriving the very same year as another prestige World War II epic, Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan, released just months earlier. The 2 films became forever linked as dueling visions of the war. Spielberg's visceral, kinetic assault on the beaches of Normandy versus Malick's dreamlike, philosophical meditation in the jungles of the Pacific. One asked what men do in war. The other asked what war means. The comparison shaped both films' receptions, and often not in Malick's favor commercially. Saving Private Ryan was the more accessible, more celebrated hit. At the Oscars, they competed directly. The Thin Red Line earned 7 nominations but won none, losing key categories, including cinematography, to Spielberg's film. Yet, time has been kind to Malick's version. Many critics now regard The Thin Red Line as the more profound and enduring of the 2, the war film that dared to be a poem. 11. The title isn't from the poem. You think the phrase, "the thin red line," has a famous military origin. Rudyard Kipling used it in his poem Tommy, and it traces back to the thin red line of heroes, the red-coated 93rd Highlanders who held their ground against a Russian cavalry charge at the Battle of Balaclava in the Crimean War. Most people assume that's what the film's title refers to. It isn't, at least not directly. The title comes straight from James Jones's novel, and it means something darker and more internal. In the book, the line appears in a fuller phrase, the thin red line that divides the sane from the mad, and the living from the dead. It's not about military valor at all. It's about the razor's edge of the human mind under the extremity of combat, the fragile boundary a soldier can cross in an instant. Malick's whole film is about that invisible line, not the battlefield one. 10. Guadalcanal was too dangerous to film on. The thin red line depicts the Battle of Guadalcanal, but the real island proved nearly impossible to shoot on. Some background footage was captured at the actual Guadalcanal, but the location was malaria-ridden, too rugged, and too remote to sustain a full film crew. So the production relocated the war to Australia. The bulk of filming, including the pivotal battle for the hill, took place across about 100 days in Queensland's lush Daintree rainforest and on Bramston Beach, roughly 1,000 miles from the real Guadalcanal. The scale was enormous, around 250 actors and 200 crew members. After Queensland, the production moved to the Solomon Islands for 24 days of jungle photography, then finished with 3 days on the Pacific near Santa Catalina Island off California. Malick used the untouched Australian rainforest to create the film's signature vision, nature as a vast, indifferent, achingly beautiful witness to human slaughter. The paradise on screen is real. The war within it was staged next door. 9. The novel's author lived this story. The thin red line carries unusual authenticity because its source was written by a man who was there. James Jones, who wrote the 1962 novel, was a U.S. Army soldier who fought at Guadalcanal himself. And his book is semi-autobiographical, drawn directly from his combat experience. Jones was already a giant of war literature, having written From Here to Eternity, and his Guadalcanal novel is regarded by military historians, including figures like Sir John Keegan, as among the greatest American novels about the Second World War. That lived experience is the bedrock beneath Malick's philosophy. However abstract and lyrical the film becomes, its foundation is a real veteran's memory of real terror. The fear, the boredom, the sudden death, the strange beauty a frightened man notices in a field of grass. Malick added the metaphysics, but the raw material is testimony. The thin red line's dreamlike surface floats on something hard and true. One soldier who survived and never forgot. A brief pause before we move up the line. If this deep dive is earning it, hit like and subscribe because we tell the story behind a great film every week. Now, back to Guadalcanal, starting with the breakout star who almost wasn't in it. 8. Jim Caviezel became the lead almost by accident. The thin red line's emotional center is Private Whit, the serene, questioning soldier who opens and closes the film, played by a then little-known Jim Caviezel. But Whit wasn't conceived as the protagonist. The film only found its lead in the editing room, where Malick, having cut down Adrian Brody's intended lead role, gravitated toward Caviezel's contemplative presence as the soul of the movie. A relative newcomer was elevated over 2 hard years of editing into the face of a Terrence Malick epic. It became a genuine breakout, launching Caviezel toward his most famous role 5 years later, playing Jesus in Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. There's a thread there worth pulling. Whit is the film's most spiritual figure, gazing at the world with a kind of transcendent calm, already halfway to sainthood. Malick found that quality in an unknown and built his film around it. Sometimes a movie discovers its true star only after the cameras stop. 7. Hans Zimmer wrote the score before seeing footage The Thin Red Line's haunting, meditative score, one of Hans Zimmer's most admired works, was composed in an unusual way. Because of Malick's process, Zimmer reportedly wrote a great deal of the music before there was footage to score, responding to the script, the themes, and the mood rather than to finished picture. The music became part of the film's raw material, something Malick could edit alongside the images rather than lay on top afterward. The result is a radical departure from the bombast expected of a war film. Zimmer's score is patient, swelling, almost prayerful, blending orchestral, classical, and Melanesian choral elements to match Malick's vision of nature and spirit. It was Oscar-nominated, though some felt it was too subtle for the Academy's taste. For many, it's the film's beating heart, the sound of a movie that treats a battle less as an action sequence than as a hymn, mourning and marveling at the same time. 6. Nicolas Cage lost his role to a phone call. The casting of The Thin Red Line has its own strange near misses, and one is almost comic in its Malickness. Before the cast was finalized, Nicolas Cage had lunch with Malick in Hollywood in February 1996 to discuss the film. Then Malick went off to scout locations. And when he tried to reach Cage that summer to move forward, the connection was simply lost in the shuffle. By some accounts, the famously deliberate director drifted on, and Cage was no longer part of the picture. It fits the film's whole legend. Even the casting was elliptical, unhurried, and slightly dreamlike, mirroring the way Malick made the movie itself. Countless major actors orbited the project, some landing roles, some losing them to the tides of a director who worked on his own mysterious schedule. Cage's vanished involvement is a small emblem of the larger truth about The Thin Red Line. It was a film that happened on Terrence Malick's time, or not at all. 5. Sony dropped it, then Fox doubled its money. The Thin Red Line nearly fell apart before filming began. The project was originally set up at Sony, but the studio dropped it shortly before production over fears of budget overruns, a reasonable worry given Malick's reputation for ambition and his 20-year absence from the industry. It was a significant vote of no confidence in a film that would become an acclaimed classic. 20th Century Fox stepped in to rescue it, and Malick delivered a pointed rebuttal to the doubters. Despite the daunting international shoot and his long hiatus, he brought the film in on time and on budget. And it paid off. The movie's box office returns reportedly doubled the studio's investment, grossing around $98 million worldwide, making it a solid commercial success, and remarkably, Malick's most commercially successful film to that point. The studio that got cold feet missed out on a prestige hit. The studio that took the risk got 7 Oscar nominations and a Berlin Golden Bear. 4. It won the top prize at Berlin. For all that it went home empty-handed from the Oscars, The Thin Red Line received one of world cinema's highest honors, the Golden Bear, the top prize at the Berlin International Film Festival in 1999. It's a distinction that places the film in the company of the most celebrated art cinema on the planet. A recognition from an international jury of exactly the qualities mainstream American audiences sometimes found challenging. Its elliptical structure, its philosophical ambition, its refusal to behave like a conventional war movie. The split is telling. Some mainstream viewers found the narrative too amorphous, the pacing too deliberate, the whispered voiceovers too abstract. But by the standards of art cinema, it was both a critical triumph and a solid box office success. A rare film that satisfied festival juries and still found a real audience. Martin Scorsese has named it among his favorite films of the 1990s. The critic Gene Siskel called it the greatest contemporary war film he had seen. History has sided with them. 3. The voiceover was rebuilt from scratch in the edit, one of The Thin Red Line's most distinctive features. Its layered, drifting voiceover, in which multiple soldiers murmur philosophical reflections on war, nature, and the soul, was radically reconstructed in post-production. Recall that Billy Bob Thornton had recorded roughly 3 hours of narration intended to guide the film. Malick threw it all out. Instead, he redistributed the inner monologue among the ensemble so that the film's questioning voice belongs not to one narrator, but to many soldiers at once, sometimes unidentifiable, blurring into a collective human consciousness. It's a defining artistic choice, and it emerged entirely from Malick's editing room alchemy rather than the original plan. The effect is unique in war cinema. Rather than following a plot, the audience floats through a chorus of interior voices, each man privately wrestling with the same eternal questions amid the chaos. The film's soul was assembled after shooting, from pieces, much like the movie itself, found rather than filmed. 2, it launched a new era of Malick and divided audiences forever. The Thin Red Line marked the beginning of Terrence Malick's remarkable second act. After 20 years of silence, he returned and never stopped again, going on to make The New World, the Palme d'Or-winning The Tree of Life, and a string of increasingly experimental films. The elliptical, voiceover-driven, nature-drenched style he crystallized here became his signature. And The Thin Red Line is where that mature Malick voice fully emerged, more meditative and abstract than his 1970s work. That style permanently split viewers and still does. To admirers, Malick is a poet of cinema, using film to ask the biggest questions about existence, God, and nature. To detractors, his later work is self-indulgent and plotless. 1. The war film that dared to be a philosophical poem Step Back, and The Thin Red Line stands as one of the boldest films Hollywood has ever funded, a nearly 3-hour, star-packed war epic that largely refuses the pleasures of the war genre. There are no rousing speeches, little conventional heroism, and long stretches where the camera abandons the soldiers to gaze at a bird, a blade of grass, a shaft of light. It asks not who wins the battle, but what nature makes of our violence. Whether there is a great evil moving through the world, and where it comes from. Those were 15 facts most fans have never heard about The Thin Red Line. Which one stayed with you? The lost 5-hour cut, or Adrian Brody discovering his role was gone at the premiere? Share it in the comments. If this earned it, hit like, subscribe, and send it to the friend who still argues it's better than Saving Private Ryan. Until next time, look at the light.